forward every week. About 60 applications to join the British Secret Service come to my desk. Most of them specify not the clerical or menial grades, in which there is an occasional vacancy for men with the appropriate background, but the double O section, the one whose member are licensed to kill. Welcome to the James Bond complex. My name is Matt,
I'm Edgar.
and we are a podcast that covers the entire James Bond phenomenon, from Fleming to film, and of course, everything in between.
Oh,
And today, it's been almost a year since the pandemic started. As of this recording, um, I'm feeling, I let myself a little go a little. My beard, I don't have a Zuritsky or Darlington beer right now. But I've had it longer this summer. Was causing 7 years ago. Wait, what am I doing? I'm Canadian. And on it started it
mm,
started to grow again. My hair is long. I feel a bit I don't feel very good about myself. I saw something online that I'm like, oh, I need this to feel a little bit more Bondian. It's a book I found online, written by I'm gonna mess the grades, but Lieutenant Colonel Bill Tanner. It's the Book of Bond, and it gave me all those tips to be more like James Bond. To every man his own 007. So we're discussing the Book of Bond, which it's hard to find, especially at the decent price. There's a few editions. I was fortunate enough to get a copy around $25 plus shipping. I've lent you the copy. I was surprised because I don't yeah. I was surprised I never checked the number of pages on this book when I purchased it, and I was surprised to when I started reading. An hour passed, and I was halfway through the damn thing. I woke up in the middle of the night. I couldn't sleep, so I picked up this book and I'm halfway done. And another evening, I woke up in the middle of the night and I started reading. I'm done. I landed
mm.
to you, and knowing you, you probably read it in one sitting, an afternoon.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I read it yesterday. I had a couple reads I wanted to knock out. A couple read. Actually, that's kind of an expression. I had a couple reads I wanted to knock out this week, so I wanted to get through those couple books before I got to this. But yeah, no, this is we're recording this late on a Sunday morning, and no, I read this on a Saturday night,
Mm.
last
This
night.
this book is well, it's not written by Bill Tanner. It's written technically, you could say it's written by Robert Markham, which is an alias of Kingsley Amis, who
Mm,
used that alias to write Colonel Sun.
mm.
I, you
Colonel
know,
Sun.
Colonel Soleil.
Ouais.
Um, I actually I don't say if I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I was curious about it because it's one of those books that I've heard about. I saw a picture of the first edition, which has a dust cover that you can flip, and it's the Bible written as literature. And I think it's from the books that Bond hides a gun inside of it. I'm not entirely too sure. Like, my memory's a little bit fuzzy on some of the details. But it's always made me curious. I was always curious about this book, so I've always been looking to. I honestly said that I would have loved to have the first edition, but it's still, I saw it at $500, and fortunately,
Mm.
I'm not buying a book mostly for display because I mean for content it's very thin content wise, but
Mm.
it's funny enough. It's meant to be a little bit more comedic than it's not. When we first discussed this, you expected it to be like the autobiography that I think it's been. Is it a year since we did that book?
Could be two. Could be two.
Could be two, right? But I think you expected something like that, and fortunately, it's not. It's completely different, but at the same time, you know, I want to know what are because I spoiler. We had a brief discussion when I lent you the book. I told you
Yeah.
about my impressions, and you picked up the book. And I'll read it. If it's that thin, I'll read it in an afternoon. What are your feelings and thoughts on the Book of Bonds after reading it?
Yeah, it was a bit of an odd experience. It's true. My presumption that it would be along the lines of the autobiography didn't hold true. With the lone exception being they're both in their own curious way, meta. But other than that, they're not all alike. Other than the meta aspect. In this case, it's meta that the book is being written by, a fictional character in the world of James Bond. I was taking some notes, and I was like, my first note is like, who is he writing to? And I haven't been able to come up with an answer. But it's meta in that sense. As for the experience itself, it's I think reading the book made me maybe I learned something about myself reading the book, which is always a nice experience. Um, the book itself, how would I? Back in the day, I don't know if they do it anymore for television shows or what we still call television, but it's not really television anymore. Network television. I remember back in the day when we all had our favorite shows. It really didn't matter what your favorite show was. Your favorite show, insert title of preference, had a clip show, had a clip episode. And I usually tuned out with the clip episode because I was like, no, I'd rather just watch that episode. And and that's sort of the vibe I got a little bit with this. Props to Amos for well, he wrote Colonel Soleil, so obviously he's very adept at writing James Bond. He knows his Bond. When you read this book, you can tell he knows his Bond. The attention to detail is certainly there, but it's almost like there was something, I don't know, there was something a little bit lazy about it that I couldn't. I'm breaking my table. There was something I couldn't shake and I tried. So maybe the next chapter, maybe the next chapter, and I could not shake off that scene. It's like I would tilt my head. I was like, oh right, that's like that scene in Moonraker. Right, the book that I have right there that I could read whenever I want. This is like the clip episode version of that. So I was like, I don't. One of the questions I asked myself was, and I'm setting aside, the in-world, the book universe of who is he writing this for, the real world question of, who is he writing this for? Well, if you don't know your Fleming, a lot, not everything, but a lot of this won't mean anything to you. And if you know your Fleming, don't you sort of just go like, yeah, I'm just gonna pick up Casino Royale and read that instead. So that's sort of the vibe I got. But the research is there and the attention to details there. So what about you?
It's meant to be sort of not a parody, but a little bit a tongue-in-cheek look at the character in the world of James Bond. And at first, it was I was a little bit puzzled because it starts with them sort of explaining Bill Tanner explaining that he's writing this book because they've been getting letters of Bond fans who want to apply for the 00 section, and he sort of summarized that it's not something you can apply for. They recruit you, but if you want to be sort of on the short list, here are the characters of James Bond, and it's almost it's a bit satirical, and it's a little bit the way it's written at times. It feels like it's mocking the character of James Bond a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I it's another way of looking at the character that it amused me, because the know-it-all aspect of James Bond. It also I don't know how much of a friend of Fleming Kingsley Amis was, because I remember reading, I think it's in James Bond: The Man in His World. There's a story that Fleming was in sort of a club for fine dining eaters, and they were talking about the perfect meal, what it would be like, but those guys didn't know how to cook shit. So there was a element of fraud to them, and I realized
Mm.
there's a element of fraud to James Bond. He says, I know this, I know this," and sometimes even critics of the time, I think there's something béarnaise sauce. You shouldn't eat it with. I don't remember exactly, but like cooks say, no, that's not how you're supposed to eat that. And there's an element of that. Bill Tanner says, yeah, don't go, don't try to talk about stuff that you don't know anything about. Limit yourself. And there's another section where he talks about conversation, the way that Bond talks, and you should, if you want to be like Bond, talk. And he describes it as not conversation starters, but conversation enders, and
Mm.
it's these opinions that even in the book you're like, whoa, that's a little bit special. When he's talking about Chigros and Doctor No, you're like, wow, that's.
Yeah.
But if you, it's basically the character of Bond saying, "I'm not interested in your discussion.
Right.
Just shut the f up." Which I'm like, oh, that's another. It gave me an appreciation for like when I revisit these books, which we're about to start doing the second edition, which I'll use the book of Bond sort of to change my perspective on the books or adapt, because see if Kingsley Amis's interpretation is something I can pick up on in the book from here on my second reading. Well, not my second official second reading, but or
Yeah.
second batch of
Right. Right.
episodes. So that's something that it amused me. This book hasn't been reprinted since the '60s, and yeah, I've always and I remember who I was talking to on the internet, but I've always wanted them to reprint it. But having read it, it's very niche. The people who would pick up a book like that, it's very niche. It's not the film fans. Even the people who love Fleming would, it's depending on how you price and sell it. Maybe a digital copy. Uh,
Mm.
but interestingly enough, I was thinking about this. And I'm like, oh, if I am Barbara or Michael, and I don't. I want to have a few actors read for the part of Bond. I would actually give them this book. Read it. It's not very long. It'll give you a taste of the character of James Bond, sort of his idiosyncrasies,
Mm.
before like having them do a screen test. I think it might be interesting for an actor that's
Yeah.
trying to get into the character of Bond without reading all the novels and watching all the movies
Right.
and studying. If you want to go method, if you just want to go, I feel for it. Just that's my interpretation. This is
Right.
a decent tool.
Mm. No, it could potentially be useful for that. No, I can see that. Although the actors do tend to, um, I don't remember Brosnan ever saying, although I may be just misremembering, to be fair, but I knew the actors do tend to, even Roger Moore said he read The Spy Who Loved Me. Like the actors did try to read a couple of the Flemings to have an idea. But yeah, I suppose if the actor didn't want to do that, or for whatever reason, lack of time, lack of whatever, yeah, no, this could be, with the caveat that this the book isn't really supposed to be taken that seriously, but you can still have an idea of who the character of Bond is. Yeah, no, it could be used as that kind of a tool. It's very specific. It's a very specific example, but yeah, no, it could be used like that.
That's a Cliff Notes version. It feels like somebody's doing, and I make the joke. It's like if as if I wrote How to Be Edgar Chaput, the Book of Chaput, and I picked up all your idiosyncrasies. Oh, you need to let your beard grow a little bit. You need to wear these types of shoes. You need this brand of coffee. You need to go for that many runs per. It's a loving sort of. Satire of a fictional character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have much to say about this book,
It's
honestly. It was. I think a couple of things. I realized a couple of things. I think the timing was off for me. I should have read it either earlier or maybe push this recording later. I read some good stuff this week, and then when I got to this, it was like, okay, this is like nothing.
Well, you know what? It is a little bit. It feels like bonus material on a DVD.
Well, what kind of bonus material? Why don't I just read Casino Royale? So, like, that's the thing. But that's where it gets to what I learned about myself. Maybe I need to be more open-minded about stuff like this. I will admit there is a snobbish element to myself, to my personality. When I pick up a book, I want a book. Give me a
No,
book. Whereas this is not like this is almost not reading for me. It's well written. The English is good. The English is good. Kingsley Amis is a good writer. But as far as the content, it's like, I don't need to read this. But that's just me. And I need to be more open. I need to be more open.
I wouldn't 100% disagree with your feeling. I know where you're coming from. I know you well enough to know, like, when I read this, I'm like, Edgar's gonna be sort of. I'm pretty sure you found some of it amusing, like some of the zingers that they have a list of zingers, and I'm like, oh, that one's gonna make. I think I sent you the screenshot when I saw that. I was like, that's Edgar about
It's
the.
a bit better in context, though. It was a bit better again. It kept making me think, like, oh, like I like that passage in the book, and that's why that line works. Just as like as a clip show version of that line of dialogue, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, it's very clip showy, but at the same time, there's there's probably hundreds of books that were written, similar books that exist, the best quotes or sort of the Cliff Notes version of films, books about James Bond. But this particular one, why I wanted to read is a element of legitimacy because it's one of the authors who not only wrote a continuation novel, but Kingsley Amis also wrote I think it's the very first serious literary an analysis of Bond after Fleming died, the James Bond dossier, which
Yeah.
is also a book I want to find. It's also a little bit harder to find because it hasn't been reprinted many times. You know what? If the Ian Fleming publication would, what they could do is bundle Colonel Son, James Bond dossier, and the Book of Bond in sort of a bundle and just sell it this way. This if you're gonna reprint them physically, this is something they should actually consider. A little Kingsley Amis
Right.
dossier. I'd
Yeah.
be actually very interesting. But
Well, the Bond dossier. No, go ahead.
as a whole, unless you're a super, who's going to want to read this? People who are just into the movies don't get this book. It won't make any sense to you. It'll bore you to tears. People who know their Fleming, but by that I mean you can the names of the couple that spy on James Bond at the beginning of Casino Royale. The type of alcoholic drinks the
Mm.
precise drinks. Like if you're at that level, maybe you know what the Bill Koenig of this world. I'm not sure if Bill
Mm.
has read that, but you
I've
might
asked him.
get something. But at the price, like sometimes if you find a decent copy, you can get it for $30. But it's for the amount of pages, entertainment wise, it's not worth it. Yeah, I mean, I lent it to you. I'll lend it to Emery because Emery was actually tracking one down, and after reading it, like I still wanted my collection, but I can't recommend this to anyone, to almost anyone. It's it's a curiosity. It's
Mm.
oddball. It's something that's bizarre, but yet entertaining. But at the same time, it's not that funny, and it's not that.
Some of the things taken out of context, like, don't read well at all. Like,
Mm,
things that women are supposed to say. It's like, that's frankly, it's a little bit of an embarrassing chapter, and it's like, I think the interesting thing about when you witness that in the Fleming book is that it doesn't make it better, but the context of it, I don't know, it's more it's easier to deal with, whereas this almost like as almost what I don't know is a gag. I mean, the book is supposed to be a gag, like it's humor is subjective.
subjective.
Yeah, there are few things in life that are more subjective than humor. So when I say what I'm about to say, it can only be from Edgar Chaput. Like, it's not funny at all. Like, it's a pretty terrible line. Um, but again, that can only be the Edgar Chaput view. So yeah, it's when these things are taken out of their context and put into a different context, it's almost like I guess my overall opinion of the book is like, well, it was a nice swing, but you didn't hit the ball, but man, it's a good looking swing.
No,
You
it's
just you just need to actually hit the ball next time, but that's sort of like my sweeping drive-by opinion of the book, which is
and all.
positive.
There are elements also when he's giving pointers to how to beat James Bond, but you realize he's making references to cars that are like 30 years old. Oh, you should drive this car. We talk about this car, but maybe not because it's old, and you're gonna look older if you talk about stuff like that. It's self-aware that there's a retro quality to the character of James Bond.
But we picked up on those things when we read the books, and I'm sure we'll talk about them again. So again, it goes back to, and I I don't find it fun coming on to the pod. I feel very fortunate that in 3+ at the time of this one gets out, it's certainly 3+ years. I feel very fortunate that 99% of the time, it's always been about stuff that I liked a lot, thought was pretty decent, or it's okay. It's not fun coming onto the podcast and just not having anything, not having much to say, period. B, even when I'm trying to say something, I'm not even like, it's not fun.
No,
The two better chapters to me, I guess, were food and drink, just because there are something there's a little bit of mixology in there. So if you're curious about, but again, there are books that do that already. But if you happen to have this book in your hand, there's a little bit of mixology in there. There's a little bit of he's speaking. Oh, if you're in France, the langoust is very good. If you're in Italy, the what did he call it? Tagliatelle Verdi. What did he call it? Just a second. It's not a long book. I'll find it pretty quickly. Tagliatelle Verdi, the green pasta. It's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. There are like 1,000 things to eat when you're in Italy, but I'll keep that in mind. So those were maybe like the two chapters that sort of. I think maybe another problem was, I think those are the first two chapters of the book. So I thought maybe I was going to get a little bit more of that, and like that sort of material doesn't
oh,
really come back. So.
it's you know what? It's the book itself is like a very long sort of not a chapter, but It's like Reader's Digest. It's a chapter of a Reader's Digest magazine where it's like it condenses everything about Bond into 111 pages.
Mm.
But it's very dry. It's trying to be funny, but at the same time, you have to know the references, and some of the references. I mean, they're talking about stuff of cars and events that are even at the time probably of this book's release, where like you're talking about a supercharger, a Studilac, stuff that
Yeah.
like yeah, my dad loves those things, and he's like I don't know. In 1965, he was probably, your dad's probably 50 if you're like a young adult. So by today, he's 100 years old.
Mm. Mm.
So who does it appeal to? It's
I
limited.
don't
So
know.
I'm like, if you're curious, you have, as they say, Takeshu money, and you want to spend from anywhere from $30 to $500, depending on the edition you get. If you have Takeshu money, get the first edition just for the flip cover, because I find it amusing. I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. There's like an element because it's embarrassing. It's a book that's a little bit embarrassing to read in public, like the book of Bond out to be James Bond, and especially in 2021, it's like a little bit bizarre and childish almost. So
Mm.
I appreciate that cover edition, but for everyone else, if there's a digital copy you can find online, if it's ever released as a book you can download on your Kindle, get it. But for everyone else, don't bother.
I think maybe I had trouble seeing the forest through the trees when reading this. The forest is well, it's supposed to be a humorous like poke at the character of Bond. That's the forest, I guess I would say, but I couldn't see the forest. I only saw the trees, and for me, the trees were like, oh, a reference, oh, a reference, oh, a reference, and I don't, reference humor is, again, going back to the fact that humor is just like what's more subjective than humor. But I've never vibed with reference humor. Like when the joke is the reference, there's no punchline. The punchline is the reference. I'm like, oh, I don't care.
No, but
Um,
sometimes the joke is a commentary on on something, or sort of stating that this reference that you didn't get is actually like outdated, or Bond's wrong. Bond doesn't know that much about drinking. He just acts like he does. It shows that Bond is a lot more about attitude than actual like
mm,
strong
mm.
knowledge. I'm
Right,
like, oh,
that's the
that's
forest. Yeah, and that's maybe what I failed to see when I read it.
but like I said, it's a niche appeal. It's not gonna be interesting for like probably 90% of Bond fans. 'Cause I don't know. I don't know how many fans of Bond have actually read the book or know the book very well. You might have read them once years ago, or you might be very intimate with them, depending on your level. Like I said, and your wallet. It might be something you want to pick up, or it might be something you want to forego.
But what encouraged you to pick it up? Because I'm not sure if I had seen it, if I even would have bought it. Sort of just reading what it was about. So what encouraged you? Let's put maybe a more positive spin on the episode. Like, so what
Oh,
got you to buy it?
initially, I don't know if you remember that when way back, like almost 3 years ago now, I I've did sort of logos of the titles for every Fleming book. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
that. Like, eventually I did. I started doing for all the continuation novels. I have them stored. All of them are done somewhere on my computer. And when I went to Colonel Sun, it was like, oh, he did this, he did this. But I'm like, should I do logos for them? And
Mm.
the Book of Bond has a logo that I'll use for this review. It's not very complicated, but it has its own identity. And no, I'm like, if I did the logo, I need to get it. and so that thus began my hunt for it. There are
Mm-hmm.
other books, but this one and the Bond dossier are probably the most obscure ones out there. I think the gentleman who wrote the autobiography might have another one too, but the Book of Bond is something that's always captured my curiosity. I've read plenty of how-to books. I'm a big fan of the For Dummies book. I have Marketing for Dummies. I have Cooking for Dummies. I've read Coffee for Dummies years ago. I've read plenty of books like that, so I'm always interested in those types of literature. And it says comedy, but it captured my curiosity. And when it something like that, and I found a copy that I felt was warranted a purchase. I got it.
Nice.
I talked to Emery, and I saw a copy that was not too expensive, but he didn't pull the trigger. And now, finally having read it, I'm gonna lend him the book. I don't want him to spend money on it. I wanted my collection, but if you're yeah, I'll let him judge if he wants to have
Mm.
his copy after reading it. I know it's not for everyone. I don't expect you to run out there and get your own copy just for showcase.
Yeah, but well, I don't think it's very the James Bond dossier. Although the thing about the dossier is that so many people have written analyses of the Fleming book, so maybe that's why they haven't republished that one, because it seems like everybody's done it. But that would maybe be something, if it weren't too expensive. I'm not ready and willing to pay just any price just because it's James Bond.
Mm.
Just listen to any of our debriefing episodes where we talk about the 007 store. It's not because it has 007 logo on it that I'm going to spend money on it. But if it's not too expensive, that's something I wouldn't mind reading. It seems like, see, that's, again, this is like, and I apologize to the listeners that maybe don't appreciate this, but that is most definitely maybe the slight literature snob in me. Like, that's more up my alley, like an analysis, and something that where that I would be, I can see myself maybe picking that up. I haven't even, I'll be honest, full disclosure, I haven't bothered to look, so I don't know. It's like when we say it's expensive, it's because it's like 80-90 bucks, or because it's like $800. I have no idea. But
There's a few editions. It depends on, like, the first editions always go for a little bit more. There are some copies that I saw that are within my means. But this one, there are many book analysis of the Bond universe in all its shapes and forms. But this one has the
just
added
this thing.
bonus. Yeah, the man in his
Remember
world.
when
That's
we
something.
used to use this all the time, back for the Fleming first edition? We were using this all the time. I mean, this is a godsend. And the one I bought a couple months back, where the guy just went like on crack cocaine and started writing chronologies and stuff like that. It's so I don't know, because I have the other book and because I have the man in his world. Do I need the dossier? Maybe yes, maybe no. But I'm a little bit more curious about it.
I completely understand you. Both these books, I more or less think. Well, obviously, we're doing the book of we for the Amos sort of canon. We all just need the dossier, and the dossier I'm more curious about reading, because it's the first analysis. It's a guy who knew, if I'm correct, knew Fleming, and it's also a guy who wrote the continuation novel, and
Mm,
one of the better ones. So it
yeah.
has this appeal that I'm like, I want to know what this guy thinks. I want to know.
It's a little bit like, and the more recent version. I know we're padding this, but like I think we're done with the Book of Bond, and we've been
Yeah.
barely recording for 30 minutes. But I think that we'll give bonus content. I think the more recent version of that, would you agree with me if I argue that the more recent version of Kingsley Amis would be like Raymond Benson, who wrote the Bedside
Oh,
Companion and then wrote continuation novels himself?
definitely. Benson and Amos have this in common. They wrote about Bond before writing Bond. and I've actually have the audiobook version of the Bedside Companion, and eventually I'd like to get a physical copy. It's been reprinted, but not necessarily recently. I wish I think I feel like they're bound to be reprinted, hopefully sooner than later. But it's still something that's if I remember correctly, that's reachable. There's digital copies of the book also out there. So I have the audiobook version also, which is fascinating. It is like for the Nobody Does It Better book. It's almost the same thing for the Word of Fleming. It's really well researched. It has all those anecdotes, all that data. It gives. It's almost like a biography of Fleming. I really love that.
Yeah. Again, well, that's something else that like it feels like everybody's done that to death. But if it's from Benson, and again, I'm saying this, I've read one thing of his, 0-10. That's the only Benson thing I've ever read in my life, I think.
Yeah. So I think honestly we're done. I think we've. This is a very short episode. I hope we entertained you. I hope we gave you sort of a taste for the book itself. Whether you decide to get it for yourself or not is really up to the listener. I mean, it's up to you. You know yourself. You know your Fleming. If you know your Fleming, go get it. If you don't, start reading Fleming, I guess.
I think it goes a little bit beyond that. Like, what do you want out of a companion book too? What are you hoping to get out of a companion piece? If you want something that's it's light, it's fluff, it's sort of cotton candy reading. It tries to a humorous poke at the character. Then yeah, it's right up your alley. If you're a little bit more like me, a boring person, no, even if you know you're Fleming, you don't really need to. But I will admit that I can be quite a boring person when it comes to my books. So there you go.
Or maybe as a magazine with plenty of pictures, it could be a little bit more flashy and interesting. But yeah. So I'm getting a text. It's him again.
He never learns, huh?
Seriously, my phone's in the corner. It's my smartwatch. He hacked my smartwatch. It's probably it's Boris that did the work for him. It's Mr. White. Yeah, people everywhere.
It's an audio message he left you. We do have people everywhere. Wouldn't you agree? For example, www.thejamesbondcomplex.com, which is no longer the Tumblr account. I don't know.
What's going on there. I wanted to have it point towards the anchor page, but they're not offering that option yet. I think eventually they will. So right now, I'm not touching the. I was actually thinking of just getting rid of the Tumblr and have it point towards the Facebook page.
What I might do. I don't know if I have access to the website, but if it's not too late, which it might be. I could try to see if I could pick up some of the articles I wrote for the old, now defunct blog I used to write for. Maybe publish some of those things on the website. Could be.
Yes.
But I don't know if I have. I don't know if I have access to that material anymore. But so behind the scenes homework to do. So. For now, there's still a JamesBondComplex.com. There's also a Facebook, search for the James Bond Complex, Instagram at the James Bond Complex, Twitter at the Bond Complex. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, search for the James Bond Complex, and tickle us with the thumbs up button. We're very, very ticklish. Subscribe, of course. We're hosted by our friends at Anchor.fm. We thank them for their gratuitous services. As for listening to us, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, Anchor, and of course Apple Podcasts. Search for the James Bond Complex, subscribe, write a review. We read a book. The more you read, the better a writer you become. So read this book, then write a review about our podcast and leave a 5-star glowing golden gun review. Just as James Bond always returns, we're still waiting for him. He's coming. There's a big villain out there in the world right now that probably the best villain yet, because this guy just keeps on coming back and coming back. But despite that, Jimmy returns, so too with the James Bond complex, with an episode next week. And sur ce, toujours un plaisir, bien sûr. Merci et à la prochaine.
Au revoir.